Hey Rebels, welcome back to the channel. Crypto just saw its largest liquidation event in history. Over $19 billion vanished in less than a day. So, is this the beginning of the end? I'm going to answer that in this video. We're going to walk through our typical weekly analysis, as well as this is a good opportunity for us to walk through what happened in this event, what triggered this event, and what typically happens after events like this. So, if this sounds good, like and subscribe, and we are going to dive right in. Well, let's just dive into the weekly analysis quickly to see the strength and weakness that the market is showing right now. And then I'm going to dive into what causes these events and what typically happens after these kinds of events, okay? As well as the sentiment, things like that. So, what we can see is we actually just came down to retest this trend line right here and got a very strong response from Bitcoin right here, closing above these bottoms, which is what you want to see. You don't want to see closes below these levels. We saw a high close. What we'd really like to see in the next coming weeks is a strong reaction from the market here, possibly a V-shaped recovery. If it's not a V-shaped recovery, it just means a little bit longer. And if that happens, we are actually nearing the end of the Bitcoin cycle. So we'll have to see how that pans out. Are we going to get a lower high, or are we going to chop sideways for a little bit longer before Bitcoin rolls over? Typically, it rolls over before the stock market. And then also, typically, what happens after Bitcoin peaks is the altcoin space peaks itself. So typically, that's when you have that large expansions in the altcoin space. So Bitcoin responded pretty strong here. I want to go to things like SUI. This is what the rest of the altcoin space experienced. Massive, massive liquidations to the downside. SUI came all the way down to about 50 cents before quickly recovering. This was massively, massively bought up. And then lo and behold, we actually closed above this trend line here. So let's draw this down for the entire move here. We don't have far to go for SUI to actually show itself into a position of strength here. This old trend line too that it has to overcome. So it won't take much for SUI to actually recover this entire move and be in a very strong position for a potential push higher. And you can kind of see that across the altcoin space where we had massive liquidations to the downside, quickly bought up. Typically, most of these candles are in the upper half of the candle. So very strong to see there. Why don't we go through, because there's a few things to observe in the Bitcoin dominance. Again, same kind of thing. What we were expecting to see was, and we've been talking about this on the channel for several weeks, is for Bitcoin dominance to come up and retest this trend line, potentially come and retest this support and resistance here, or even the 50% level. And it just did all that in one whack, all the way up and all the way down, closing very, very weakly below this channel that we've been tracking on the channel. So as far as Bitcoin dominance go, it was almost a nothing burger where everything absolutely bled against Bitcoin, and now we're back where we started. So that was a that's what we want to see. We don't want to see this closing up in this area to see further strength to the upside. Same with USDT dominance, absolutely ripped above this all-time resistance line up against this trend line right here, and then a close below. That's exactly what we want to see in the USDT dominance to give us indications that a lot of that money that left immediately went back into the market. So we're going to have to watch this like a hawk very closely because effectively this could be the massive capitulation moment before the altcoin season kicks off. Uh, Events like this typically, for myself, I get more excited when these things happen because this is typically what wipes out the sentiment. It wipes out the leveraged traders, and that's when the markets go on a little bit higher. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on the market manipulation that everybody's talking about later in the video once we wrap up the analysis. I'll try to keep the analysis really short, but we're seeing the things that we want to see, at least in this immediate candle. We came back down, snapped back very quickly, closed below this very important level, and that's what we want to see there. Let's go to the total three. Same kind of thing. If we just zoom way out, we've been talking about this cup and handle formation, have this massive wick to the downside before another expansion. And I have seen this before, or we have seen similar type moves like this before, where you get massive hit to the downside before another leg up. And I'll actually have to go through the charts again because I've seen it in Bitcoin where you pretty much had a move just like this, and then right after it, the charts were straight up. So a lot of people, when they look back, they don't even notice an event like this, but this would have been very scary at the time, just as it was this time. So that's something very interesting to see. Others dominance absolutely tanked. Um, is this others dominance or market cap? This is the market cap. Let me find the dominance because that's something that we've been tracking more. Fresh lows, absolutely fresh lows for the dominance, but a very interesting level because I've had this buy zone marked up on the charts for a very long time. I've had it marked up for honestly years at this point as a potential area for the dominance to get before, because it's a similar place where the market likes to bottom before you see the rally. So we've come back down to retest that. Another level that I've mentioned in the group before is this level here. Another way to look at it is the others dominance versus the Bitcoin dominance. Typically come back down to these levels before you see that expansion. And I talked about that a lot as we were talking about this wedge formation coming down. And I talked about potentially having to come down to these levels before we see more upside. So looking at this chart, this has a lot of the hallmarks of a bottom in a market where massive capitulation doesn't mean that we can't come down any further from this, but we did come down almost picture perfect to retest in this buy zone for others against Bitcoin, and off of this trend line here. So what's going to give us the most confidence that we are starting this 5 wave structure to the upside is, of course, a break of this trend line here, which we have already seen in the total two. So this is the others dominance is everything excluding the top 10, and then the total two includes the top 10, I think excluding Bitcoin. And so you can see here that basically just came down for almost a picture perfect retest here. Broke this trend. We talked about that many times on the channel, that was kind of the starting gun, coming back down for a retest, almost a picture perfect retest. What we want to see in this market is a breach of these tops. A breach of these tops is going to confirm that this was indeed a capitulation event, and we were ready for that next expansion. So I want to make something clear. Like, my personal view on the market is that this was the massive capitulation event that is going to lead to those further prices, because time and time again, what happens with these kinds of events is that the leveraged traders get flushed out, the sentiment gets wiped out, people go from belief to disbelief. And typically, I mean, this was so much selling that where's the selling coming from? Like, this just wiped everybody out. All of the leverage is now wiped out. And that may seem, and it's terrible. It's $19 billion, but we have to remember too that there are not that many new participants in the space. So yes, it was absolutely devastating to anybody who was in the market, and I have my own experience with that, which I'll also share in this video. It's going to be a lengthy one, but please stick around because there's a lot of important things to get through. Yeah, so that being said, just because I believe this, we still have to go back to the charts, because we can believe the charts. We can't believe, lots of people believed that this alt season was going to happen this entire time. And a lot of people lost a lot of money during this time because they believed that something was going to happen instead of following the charts, which is what I do on this channel. We're just going to follow the charts and let the charts tell us what's actually happening. And what the charts are telling us right now is that we broke this trend. We came back down for a retest. It got bought up very, very rapidly. It basically gave back all. This is all of the gains, all of the losses got absorbed almost immediately, right back to square one. So I think this is probably a good segue to talk about what happened in this market. And I guess I'll use SUI as an example because it's kind of a nice clean chart. Um, and I'm just going to clean this up a little bit so we can see what happens. So if you're a leverage trader and you wanted to go long anytime during this period, because if we just make this very simple, we're basically in a trading range right here. It is a constricting trading range. But to make this extremely simple, we're in a trading range from the high to the low. And we're just in this trading range, and people are expecting higher prices. So at any point in this trading range, if you were going long, especially with leverage, you would start putting stop losses in play. So perhaps you had a stop loss here if you were just recently getting into the market. Perhaps you had a stop loss here or here. These are very, very common places to have stop losses. And I'll even put one, you know, right here, even because this would have been a level well below the market. That would have been, most people would think that it would be nearly impossible for prices to come down this low. So if we zoom in, what happens? And I'm also going to talk about market manipulation. Now, if you are a buyer in this market and you want a SUI position, but you have hundreds of millions of dollars, you want to get the best price that you can. And you know that you would much rather have SUI at 180 than $3 or 350, right? So because you have so much liquidity and so much money, you are able to actually push the price down to start triggering stop losses. So what'll happen is price gets pushed down, these stop losses get hit. People who were going long here are forced to sell. Those buy orders turn to sell orders. That selling pushes the price down even farther. And there's more stop losses in between, but these are just the major ones. It pushes price down even farther, hits these stop losses. These buy orders are now turned to sell orders. People are forced selling. Price is pushed down even farther, even farther. And as this happens, there's less and less buy liquidity on the buy side, on the bid side. The market makers who provide liquidity for the markets in this situation did not have enough liquidity for the buy side of the market. So as the market went down farther and farther, the spreads got farther and farther, and there was less and less buy side liquidity. Nobody was there to buy it up. Price gets pushed down even farther, hits these stops, hits these stops. All of those buy orders get turned to sell orders. So there's just massive cascade of selling, forced selling. So much so that even APIs weren't working. Some people's stop losses didn't even get triggered because price went down so rapidly that it bypassed their stop loss altogether and then they got liquidated. Perhaps they could have got out of their position here, but unfortunately, price went so far beyond their stop losses that they got completely liquidated. So this is typically what happens in manipulation. Maybe not always to this degree, but typically before you have a pump, there is some kind of dump preceding it. Because if you're a market maker, you want to get the best price. And so this got bought up in a big way. $19 billion dollars was lost during this time, but it's almost right back to where it was. There was massive, massive buying happening right now by smart money, by participants who have a lot of money. Now, that works in our favor to the upside as well, because what will happen is if you have a $100 million position in here and you do a 5X, or you have hundreds of millions of dollars that are now billions of dollars, you need to sell that. How do you sell billions of dollars unless there are billions of dollars of buyers, right? So what you'll need to do is you'll need to cause the same kind of panic in the upward direction where price accelerates very rapidly, like in this case right here, price expands very rapidly, forcing participants to chase the market. And as they chase the market, and everybody topples in right here because everybody's convinced that it's going higher. Now that they've seen this price action, that's when they sell. So whether you believe in the market manipulation or not, it doesn't really matter because you just have to follow the charts at the end of the day. But I will say that that's something that I believe. I believe that this was a massive manipulation event. And in fact, I will post some things to my X account, some different charts of people opening short positions hours before Donald Trump announced this tariff news. Hours before this tariff news went out, people had huge short positions and closed out minutes after the announcements with hundreds of millions of dollars in profit. World Liberty Finance sold off aggressively hours before the announcement. So insider trading, all the rest of it, this market manipulation, it's true. And it can absolutely wreck you. And in fact, I got stopped out, or I got liquidated. My account got liquidated. My account got liquidated because I made a dumb mistake and I had one position that I forgot to put a stop loss on, and unfortunately that wiped me out. So the takeaway there is like another reason why you don't trade with 100% of your net worth, right? So I trade with about 3 to 5% of my net worth. And so even if I lose it all, it's something that I can recover from. Okay. So I'm just doing this for transparency. My account got liquidated. I have $1,000 left in that $12,000 account that we've been talking about. However, it's a very small portion of the holdings. And you can see also how aggressively we've bounced back so far in the market right now. So Yes, and we're going to see how what we can do with that $1,000 account. I still want to mention if you made it this far, please like and subscribe. Leave some comments below, some ideas for some future videos. Hopefully, this was helpful in explaining some of the market mechanics behind why this happened. But I do want to mention also, I am still doing the $1,000 giveaway. I'm going to do that at the end of November. I've decided that at the end of November is when I'm going to give the $1,000 away to a member of the community. Basically, what I'm looking for is you to help me get engagement with these videos by liking the videos and sharing the videos and leaving comments. Leaving comments is probably going to be how I know you're participating the most. Leaving some comments on my X posts, leaving me suggestions for videos, things like that. Just in general, being active in the community is going to be good. So, in the coming week, I'm going to have another video on how do we profit from this capitulation event, and I'll show you a couple other events as promised, things that I was talking about. We had major capitulation and liquidations here, major liquidations and capitulation here. Also, the sentiment. Let's go back in the sentiment and find out when we finally had uh, basically lows in the sentiment had reset. And it wasn't until the sentiment reset that we were able to get to higher prices. You can see here we were kind of in extreme greed on both of these indicators. So there was just not enough room for the market to expand again. And not until we started to get fear or extreme fear or panic on these indicators did we have room to the upside. And so we basically just shot down almost instantaneously into fear and panic on this indicator. So in the short term, looks like the sentiment is starting to uh, do what it normally typically does. So this was another capitulation event. You can see we dipped down into extreme fear and panic. Now I want to there is a caveat. There is still room to the downside potentially before more upside. But this massive reset, this massive flush in leverage is a huge thing. And sometimes that doesn't happen at the exact low. Sometimes prices can go a little bit lower, but they typically go too far lower. That's kind of what I want to make clear there. And then the other one was the FTX crash right here, basically. So in each of these events, you can see that prices didn't really come very low, much lower than that before they took off. And same here. I think this was the one right here. Prices came down, formed a higher low. This one right here, same kind of thing. So that's basically what we're looking at. So for me, I have not seen any bull market end in despair or panic or fear. They all end, all the big moves end in something like this, where you can see that the greed has basically peaked out in some kind of extreme greed. Actually, right here we have a kind of a divergence in the sentiment with the price, but that's beside the point. In both of these indicators, we had hit extreme greed and greed on both of these indicators, and that basically showed us that there wasn't much room to the upside. Right now, we're starting to see the sentiment reset. These are good signs. So that combined with basically the USDT dominance and the Bitcoin dominance, basically coming right back to down to where they were. That's what we wanted to see. We wanted to see um, those charts play out that way. And then again, if I can find the chart here, again, something that's very interesting is we did just come down to retest this trend line. This could potentially be a higher low. We will have to see. So I think that's it for the weekly update. Again, hopefully I explained that capitulation event and the market mechanics behind it and kind of the nefarious things that happen behind the scenes. Uh, Crypto is kind of the wild west of finance, and it is probably the most easily manipulated market because it has the newest investors, so they are more emotionally driven, and so it's easier to manipulate price on them and to get their orders filled. It's like if you're a market maker and you want prices to go higher and you're not planning on selling out big position, and in fact you're planning on buying, you need to capitulate to the downside and force selling so that you have enough volume on the buy side because everybody's selling. And same with the opposite end, like right here, you need to force people to ape into the market to buy your sell orders. So that is how they are able to buy low and sell high because they manipulate the emotions at the times. Because during these times, people are most likely to sell and they will aggressively sell because they're already fearful. that's when they're buying, and your selling fills their buy orders. And then at this time, when you are feeling the most FOMO trying to get into the market, when you are most excited about buying, you are buying their sell orders. So they are buying your loss, they are buying your losses here, and you are buying their profits here. Okay. That happens time and time again. That alone should give you a little bit of ease in this event right here. I don't think that this kind of capitulation event happens at the very end of a cycle. If the big money wants to sell, they're going to capitulate to the upside. They're going to force you to buy. If they're trying to buy this market, they're going to force you to sell. And I'll leave it at that. Hopefully that was helpful. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.